NFC North, the most exciting division in football.
Yes.
We won't talk about who quite yet. Let's talk about the Bears. We'll start with them. They finished last. They traded away their first overall pick. They leapfrogged the Texans last year after losing out. And then they went out. They got DJ Moore.
Mhm.
They signed Bob Tonyan. They addressed their offensive line needs later in the draft. And last year they traded for Chase Claypool. He'll be in the mix as well. But their big jump is signing Terrell Edmonds in the offseason. This is a Bears team that does seem to be trending upward. Justin Fields seems to be making that leap. A lot of people are picking him for MVP. So yeah, it looks like this Bears team is ready to roll. I'm not super sold on them as far as playoff contention, but overall, Bears moving upward.
Yeah, I think the Bears are moving upward this year, and I think adding DJ Moore is going to help. Wasn't a huge fan of him in Carolina, even though he did have great moments, had some explosive moments in the preseason, and I think Justin Fields hasn't really had any wide receiver help. We had a step when we added Chase Claypool, who's a fine receiver as your kind of flex 3 gadget guy, tall guy, 6'4", so he's a big target. Then we have Cole Kmet. We all know how great Cole Kmet is as a tight end. Shout out to Cole Kmet. You're the man. And then you have Matt Eberflus in his second year. How is he going to bring that defensive forward? You mentioned earlier that they signed Chase Edmonds on that defense. So you have someone at linebacker manning the back end, and that'll help with communication a lot. And then Justin Fields showed flashes last year of being a potential MVP candidate this year. He's definitely a dark horse candidate for that award. And I think you're going to be fighting for the playoffs. I think with 3 positions, I will confidently say that I think the Bears can make the playoffs this year, but I think they're in that 8 to 11 win range there, and it could go either way on the scale, but it depends on Justin Fields' health. How good is DJ Moore going to be? And then Matt Eberflus, how well is he going to be able to bring along that defense, and how much is Chase Edmonds going to eventually help them out?
Yeah, exactly.
But I think strong year, and I think the Bears do believe in their heart of hearts that they can win the division because kind of up for grabs.
Yeah, for the most part.
Yeah.
We have the Packers as well. Packers are in a transition year, similar to how the Steelers were last year removed from Big Ben. What happened? They traded Aaron Rodgers, their Lord and Savior, the last 18 years to the Jets, starting a rebuild. Finally going to see what Jordan Love is all about. They drafted a tight end in Luke Musgrave. They have Aaron Jones. They have A.J. Dillon. And now we get to fully see Matt LaFleur in his glory. Will he be the coach that everyone has anointed him as? A lot of people are pretty hesitant to embrace this Packers team, and I am definitely one of those teams. They have a decent defense, bend not break, but overall we have our questions. So entering the season, a lot of question marks for this team. And the real question mark comes down to how good is Jordan Love? Nobody knows.
Yeah, and I think the question mark with this team is I don't think the defense is going to be a problem. I think the Packers always prioritize defense in the draft, and it's always really good in the regular season, kind of gets exposed in the playoffs sometimes, similar to how the Steelers have been in the past few years. And then I think offensively, I'm not going to make a judgment until I see it. I don't know what Jordan Love is yet. No one really knows what Jordan Love is yet. We don't know what Matt LaFleur is without Aaron Rodgers. And then my thing is with this team, Aaron Rodgers had a bad year last year. Well, why did Aaron Rodgers have a down year last year? Still don't have any receivers. I mean, that's great. You drafted a guy last year who had some flashes, but we're still relying on the likes of, after that, Romeo Doubs. Sorry, it's not the answer. So I think similar to the Patriots, 2 good running backs. We have some good tight ends, and then we have a good receiver. But at the same time, we don't have enough dynamic talent to be able to carry a first-year quarterback in Jordan Love who hasn't played a full season before. And I think that's really what's ultimately going to hinder the Packers, because great roster, but it's the one team where I'm like, I can't rationally make a judgment because I have no idea what Coach Eyebrows is without Aaron Rodgers. And I haven't seen Jordan Love play a full year. And I don't want to rip the guy until I see him play at least 10 games.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Then we have a team like the Vikings who were 13-4, but had a negative point differential, bunch of one-score games, 11-0 in one-score games, the best in NFL history. Will they replicate that again? I don't see any way that's possible. They did add some players on defense this past year. They drafted the replacement for Adam Thielen, moved on from Dalvin Cook. It's Alexander Madsen's show now in Minnesota. Definitely think they take a step back from 13-4, but they should still be in the mix for the playoffs at the end of the day. Could be Kirk Cousins last year. Overall, I think they should still be a playoff team.
Yeah, they should still be a playoff team. Nothing crazy in the offseason besides losing Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook was 1,000-yard rusher last year, has been the last 5 years in the league. And with the Cowboys, I was kind of down on them with Tony Pollard. It's like, Tony Pollard's good. He's a solid running back, but I don't know if he's going to be that stud guy year in and year out for you. Same thing with Alexander Mattison, where it's like you have him. He's been able to step up in big games, similar to how James Conner stepped up when Le'Veon Bell would go down and have some 100-yard rushing games. But can he do that for a full season? We're about to find out. That was probably the biggest problem with the Vikings last year, is they didn't have a reliable play action game and they didn't have a reliable running game here. The offensive line is hit or miss. However, TJ Hawkinson and Kirk Cousins are a great dynamic duo along with Justin Jefferson. And Vikings are one of those teams like the Steelers who are just great at drafting wide receivers. Picked up another one in the draft this year to go along with Justin Jefferson. I think the offense could be a little bit more dynamic and explosive. Typically that second year with the coordinator with Kirk Cousins and Kevin O'Connell is the year where you really start to click. And that's going to be the huge question mark. Can Kevin O'Connell build on some of the mistakes he had last year, take some of the good things he had last year with Kirk Cousins and having TJ Hawkinson for a full season, and then take a step forward with that team? And I think wild card is probably the safest bet for the Vikings at this point.
Of course, especially because we have America's favorite team, who's the favorite for pretty much every award and winning this division. That's the Detroit Lions. And to describe how they were last year, we need to talk about the year before and just the overall sentiment of this franchise the last few years. First, they had Matt Patricia. They fired him. They replaced him with this guy, former tight end Dan Campbell. He went out. His first move was to trade for their franchise quarterback in Jared Goff. Had a tough first season, 3-14, but was building the foundation. This past year, they start off slow, 1-7. Oh no, the Detroit Lions are the Detroit Lions again. Then they rattle off 8 straight wins and ending it by beating their division rivals, the Green Bay Packers, knocking the Packers out of the playoffs. And then in the offseason, they go out and sign a bunch of players on defense. Their biggest hole was defense. They had the top 5 offense in the league, worst defense in the league. They go out, they get the CJ Gardner-Johnsons of the world. They get rid of Jeffrey Okudah. They sign a few other players. They draft Jack Campbell, who's looking really good. So this team has the most hype the Lions have ever had. They have Dan Campbell as the odds-on favorite to win Coach of the Year. Jared Goff is even in the MVP odds as well. So a lot of momentum for the Lions. They look like to be a lock for this division. Lions roar.
Lions roar. 2 years ago, 2 years ago, I watched Hard Knocks for the first full time as it came out. Saw Dan Campbell walk in first episode, giving a speech. One of the greatest football speeches I have ever heard. I was ready to run through a wall. I was ready to go to the gym, start repping out some bench presses, do some deadlifts with Dan Campbell in my ear. I'm like, yeah, this is the day I choose to get up and be great here. Let's choose to rebuild this franchise. And what has he done? You mentioned traded for Jared Goff, someone who is able to go to a Super Bowl, which is a lot of these top tier talents who are quote unquote better than them haven't done yet. Jared Goff is a proven playoff performer where he's not going to completely just crap his pants and fold. He had that Super Bowl, but it was a low scoring Super Bowl for Tom Brady as well. Are we ripping Tom Brady? No. And then Jared Goff comes in, builds an amazing rapport with Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's like, yeah, he may get around 200 targets. You have one of the best offenses in the league. However, you lose Jamal Williams. You lose D Swift. That's fine. We bring in Ty Montgomery, who's a fine guy, have a badass, kick-ass, beat you down offensive line with Penei Sewell there manning it. And then we draft Jahmyr Gibbs on a rookie contract, so we don't have to pay him yet. And then we also have Jameson Williams, who showed great signs last year and will be back after his gambling suspension this year. And then the real question mark was that defense. If you had a competent defense, you would be in the playoffs last year. Well, what they do, you mentioned CJ Gardner-Johnson, and CJ Gardner-Johnson isn't just a guy. Last year, he was the guy. He had the most interceptions in the league last year, was a hard-hitting safety for the Eagles, kept them in some games. Even in the first game they lost versus the Commanders, CJ Gardner-Johnson had the interception that was keeping them in the game. Go out there, draft Jack Campbell, have Aiden Hutchinson coming off close to a rookie of a year performance, but he had, I believe, 5 strip sacks and 3 interceptions, which was an incredible feat for a first-year defensive lineman, and had some incredible numbers. So that defense is going to have the communication now on the back end. We're going to have Jack Campbell stopping the run. Another year for Malcolm Rodrigo, Alex Anzalone, great player there. And then Dan Campbell is someone who is so obsessed. Was watching him in an interview with Chris Collinsworth. His wife was like, "Oh yeah, Dan likes baking," and Chris Collinsworth was like, "You what?" And Dan Campbell's like, "Yeah, I like baking like cookies and brownies and stuff. I'll spend a week trying to perfect one recipe and everything else goes in the trash." And he's like, that is some attention to detail, some analytics. And what is the one key piece that's very important to remember with the Lions this year? The number one head coaching candidate coming out of the offseason was one Ben Johnson. And Ben Johnson's like, you know what? I got a good thing going here with Jared Goff. We put up some great numbers, had an amazing offense last year. We're going to have the defense. I'm going to be able to really pick my quarterback if I want to next year, like if he goes to Tampa Bay and gets Caleb Williams, and then build that rapport as a head coach. Really was patient and is running it back for another year. Dan Campbell, candidate for coach of the year, but they're going to have the defense that's going to be able to bend but don't break and not leave guys wide open with 8 feet between them and the next closest defender. Yeah. And that's going to be the difference and why the Lions are going to win the division and be competing in the NFC this year.